Welcome back to Manhwa Heartbeats. Today, we'll be recapping a manhwa called When the Black Wolf Calls Me. Don't forget to subscribe, it helps us a lot. Enjoy. In a sunny town in Asia, the air is filled with the vibrant colors of autumn. Leaves in shades of orange, yellow, and red dance in the gentle breeze, creating a beautiful scene. Women in stunning orange and white kimonos twirl gracefully, celebrating the season. Suddenly, a crowd gathers around a striking woman dressed in white. She has long, flowing black hair that moves softly in the wind, and she clutches a sword tightly in her bleeding hand. As she strides forward, her steps are filled with purpose, and the crowd parts for her like the sea. They call out her name, Lady Yeonwoo, while pointing at the blood dripping from her hands. Concerned women dressed in green kimonos rush to her side, urging her to hold on and asking someone to fetch a doctor. Yeonwoo's bright gray eyes are filled with determination and anger as she pushes through the crowd, ignoring their worried voices. She enters a grand throne room adorned in deep shades of red. Luxurious decorations fill the space, adding to the weight of the moment. Sitting casually on a throne is a man with long red hair, lounging as if he has nothing to worry about. When he sees Yeonwoo enter, a smug smirk crosses his face, and he looks at her as if he's been expecting her arrival. With a mocking tone, he comments on her presence, teasing her about her arrival. He tells her to drop the sword, saying it's dangerous. Yeonwoo's glare intensifies as she stands her ground. She's not there to play games. She has a serious mission. His bright red eyes light up with amusement as he leans forward, curious about her intentions. He taunts her about her previous attempt to confront him, reminding her that it didn't end well. The men in the room watch closely, eager to see how this tense encounter will unfold. Yeonwoo tightens her grip on the sword, feeling the blood trickle down her hand, but she doesn't falter. With a fierce voice, she declares that he should have ended her life instead of hurting her innocent family. The weight of her words fills the room, and she feels her anger boiling inside her. The man stands up from his throne, shaking his head as if to dismiss her feelings. He steps closer, looking directly into her eyes, and tells her he could never harm her because of his feelings. Yeonwoo processes his words, feeling a mix of confusion and rage. Then, a wicked smile appears on her face as she scoffs at the idea of love. She challenges the notion that he can call his actions love after all the pain he has caused her and her family. Tears of frustration spill down her cheeks, and her cheeks flush with anger as she lets her emotions out, confronting him about the reality of their situation. The tension in the room thickens as the men watch, captivated by the drama unfolding before them. Yeonwoo stands tall, sword in hand, ready to confront the man who has brought her so much pain. Her heart races with a mixture of fear, anger, and determination as she prepares to fight for justice, unwilling to back down this time. Yeonwoo stands there, filled with rage, shouting that he killed her whole family and hung their bodies by the castle gate. How can he dare to talk about love? He did this just because she locked eyes with him. He burned his name into her skin with a hot iron, marking her forever. Her anger boils, but she takes a deep breath, trying to calm down, and lowers her voice. Regardless of what he thinks, he calls all of this love. Hyo Jo smirks, claiming it is love, because she belongs to him, and her body is covered with his name. As he speaks, the wind lifts her neckline, revealing the mark on her chest. She throws her hands up in frustration, yelling that she does not belong to him. Trembling, she repeats that she is not his. Hyo Jo steps closer, reaching out to steady the sword in her hand, saying she is his forever. He kisses the hand that grips the bleeding sword. She laughs sarcastically, pulling her hand away and calling him a psycho. She wonders why she even tries to talk to someone like him. Then she brings the blade up to her neck, pressing it against her skin, drawing blood. Hyo Jo's face turns to panic as he sees this. With wide eyes and sweat beading on his forehead, he tells her to hand over the sword. She reminds him that she already said he can never have her. The only person who can end her life is herself. In one swift motion, she drags the sword across her neck, cutting deeply. Hyo Jo screams her name as she falls to the floor, blood pooling around her. He shouts for help, begging the men in the room to get a doctor. Yeonwoo reflects on her life, feeling that the only time she ever saw the blue sky was on her birthday, and now she has given him a fitting birthday gift. She hopes he suffers for the rest of his life, just like she did. Hyo Jo gathers her in his arms, desperate and frantic, as he pleads for them to hurry. Yeonwoo feels her blood soaking her gown, and dripping onto the floor, as she slowly loses strength. Her eyes begin to close, and she catches sight of a man with dark hair, dressed in ash and red. She wonders to herself who he is. Tears are streaming down his face, and she thinks, no one should tell her he is crying for her. She doesn't want him to look at her like that. As she feels her life slipping away, she closes her eyes, thinking about getting her revenge, even as tears fall. She wants to feel joy in her own death. Yeonwoo feels like she is sinking underwater, and she thinks, oh, God of the underworld. She doesn't understand why he keeps giving her such a hard life over and over again. She pleads for this time to be different. She doesn't want to go through it again. She would rather disappear as she is. So she begs not to be reincarnated into a world where Hyo Jo exists. Suddenly, she opens her eyes and softly says, "MHM." It hits her where she is, and she starts looking around in a panic. She finds herself getting out of a red car, and yells that they should not tell her anything. Her voice trails off as she kneels on the ground, filled with frustration. She asks why, with wide eyes, wondering how she ended up here again. After a moment, she calms down and realizes that Hyo Jo is already here. Panic rises within her, and she knows she needs to run. But her legs feel heavy and unresponsive. Just then, the dark-haired man approaches her on horseback. He tells his horse to go easy as he gets closer. His dark hair falls across his face, and his long gold earrings catch the moonlight, shining brightly. He looks at her with golden eyes and tells her he sees that she is an earthling. Yeonwoo stares back at him, feeling wary and unsure. The dark-haired man tells Yeonwoo that he sees she is an earthling. She stares at him in awe, unable to find her voice. Then she remembers that things are different this time. In her previous life, Hyo Jo had definitely appeared. She turns to see her family. Her dad is looking worried and asks if everyone is okay. He checks on her mom and then on her, asking if she is hurt. Yeonwoo rubs her head, and tells him she is fine. She watches her dad and mom, feeling amazed that her father, her mother, and her sister Seo-woo are all alive. The dark-haired stranger catches her attention again, and asks if she is badly hurt after the accident. Before Yeonwoo can answer, her dad jumps in, saying everyone is fine. Yeonwoo whispers to herself, wondering what is up with the man's strange clothes. Is there a drama filming nearby? Her dad then asks the dark-haired man if he can borrow his phone, because his isn't working anymore. Maybe it got cracked in the accident. The stranger looks a bit confused but says he can help. Then he calls out to some guards, and a few men with brown hair tied back in ponytails come over, asking how they can help. The man tells them to take Yeonwoo and her family to greet Jang Gong. Yeonwoo repeats Jang Gong in her head, and it suddenly clicks. This place belongs to the ruler of the underworld, who is Hyo Jo's father. She realizes that she is bound to run into Hyo Jo here. As she looks up, she sees blackbirds flying in circles above them. Her heart races and she thinks, no, he must be on his way here already. Panic sets in as she understands that this place is not safe for her or her family. They need to run and leave this place immediately, without wasting any time. But where can they go? Just then, Seo-woo calls out to Yeonwoo, saying her sister should listen, because the guy is offering to help them. Seo-woo looks at the dark-haired man and then at her sister, telling her that she should stand. But she quickly stops when she sees the state Yeonwoo is in, asking, "Unnie?" Suddenly, Yeonwoo's hair turns silver, and both sisters stare at it in shock. Seo-woo asks, "What is this? What happened to you?" Yeonwoo replies that she has no idea either. Just then, the dark-haired man joins the conversation, saying, "How splendid." He tells Yeonwoo that it is his first time seeing hair as shiny as hers and insists she should come with him. Yeonwoo is confused and says, "What?" Her dad jumps in, saying to hold on a moment. He asks why the man is only taking his eldest daughter. The stranger assures him not to worry, he will get to see her again once she meets Jang Gong. Her dad demands to know how he is supposed to trust him. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that at this rate, she will definitely run into Hyo Jo. She remembers Hyo Jo's words about how he could not possibly kill her if he loved her so much. She feels guilty and puts her hands on her head, saying she is sorry, really sorry, to everyone. She thinks it is all her fault. Then a voice in her head asks if she is truly sorry. Did she not know that Hyo Jo was going to kill them all? The voice tells her to admit it, that this time they will die because of her. With a strong sense of resolve, Yeonwoo looks at the dark-haired man and says that she will go with him. He looks back at her with contempt. Seo-woo is shocked and asks, "Sis, are you being serious right now?" Her father chimes in, "Yeah, Yeonwoo, this is dangerous." Yeonwoo thinks about how unsure she feels about this choice, but if she wants to avoid Hyo Jo right now, this is her only option. Just then, a new voice joins the conversation, suggesting they should just leave her be. A woman walks up to them wearing a pantsuit, and asks since when Yeonwoo listens to them. She expresses how worried she is and how frustrated they are when Yeonwoo does whatever she wants. Yeonwoo's dad gently addresses the newcomer as honey. Yeonwoo tries to explain, saying, "It's not like that, Mom." But her mom just TSKS, and says to forget it. She won't bother with Yeonwoo anymore and tells her to do whatever she wants. The dad questions his wife, asking if it is really okay to leave their daughter behind like this. Seo-woo looks at their mom, calling out to her while glancing at her sister. Yeonwoo feels guilty for not explaining everything to her mom in detail, but she thinks to herself that this time, she will protect her. Suddenly, she turns her head, sensing a shadow looming over her. It's the dark-haired man from before. He bends down to meet her gaze and comments that she is quite a peculiar lady. His golden eyes seem to lock onto her as he tells her that being left alone with him in this situation is not an easy choice. Yeonwoo stares back at him with a cold look. She asks if he has something he wants to discuss with her personally, just like she does. He reaches out his hand, asking if she won't take it. When she places her hand in his, he smirks as he helps her up. He kisses the back of her palm and says that holding a beautiful woman's hand is an honor in the underworld. Yeonwoo blushes at his actions. He then asks what she wanted to tell him. She swallows hard and starts to sweat. She thinks to herself that it's okay, she can do this. After descending into the underworld from a car accident, she always ends up back at this moment whenever she dies there. This would be her third life in the underworld. She remembers the painful experiences of her second life and decides to use everything she knows about Hyo Jo to finally be free from him. Suddenly, she grips the dark-haired man's hand and says, with tears in her eyes, "Please, take me." The dark-haired man looks at her, confused and trembling. He asks her if she realizes what it means for a woman to tell a man she just met to take her. Yeonwoo turns pale and says yes, she knows what it means. Since her second life in the underworld, she has learned something important in her desperation. The moment she arrived in this place, she understood that she couldn't go back to her original world. She also realizes that staying out of Hyo Jo's sight is even more impossible. She thinks to herself that she can't go through that awful life again. She would rather not. So, she boldly declares that she will become his woman. The dark-haired man is speechless for a moment, surprised by her words. He then smiles gently and wipes her tears away, telling her that her confession seems sad. He wonders who in the world would look like that while saying she wants to become someone's woman. He feels curious about her, but he can't just take a stranger as his own. Yeonwoo cuts him off, shouting no. She insists that someone who comes across a lost person usually asks if they are hurt, or tries to help them get back home. But he didn't do that. Instead, he asked her family to greet someone named Jang Gong right away. That sounds like a rule in this place, right? Yet he suddenly wanted to talk to her alone, even though it goes against that rule. Is she wrong? The man replies that her request doesn't seem simple at all. He tells her to excuse him. Suddenly, he lifts her up and puts her on his horse, making her scream in fear. After setting her down, he proposes a deal. He explains that he doesn't take in strangers, but he is naive enough to believe that she genuinely wants to become his woman. So, he asks her to be honest and tell him what she really wants. He smiles warmly at her, and says he wants to know the true feelings behind her fake confession. Yeonwoo steadies herself by holding onto his shoulders, thinking about what she truly wishes for: her mom, her dad, and Seowoo. Her thoughts trail off, and she looks down, avoiding eye contact as she pleads with him to please protect her, no matter what happens. He nods and tells her that's good. Then he climbs onto the horse behind her, and they start to ride off. As they go, he realizes they haven't even introduced themselves yet. He tells her his name is Hwita and asks for hers. She replies with a sullen expression, saying her name is Chai Yeonwoo. It feels like a long time since she has been able to wander around freely like this. He tries out her name and compliments her, saying it's a beautiful name. They ride in silence until they reach their destination. When they arrive, he announces that they have made it. Yeonwoo looks around and realizes they are at the back entrance of the palace. Hwita points out that her hair stands out and suggests that it would be better to enter this way, keeping a low profile. She looks at him with uncertainty, and he notices. He asks if this is her first time seeing the flowers around them. He directs her attention to the cute white flowers blooming nearby and explains that these flowers only grow in the underworld. He tells her that this place is always dark, with the sky being pitch black and the only light coming from the lava flowing nearby. The flowers absorb ash from the lava as nourishment, which is why they can bloom here. Yeonwoo nods, understanding. Then she remembers something from her past life. Hyo Jo once gave her a bouquet of those flowers and called her name as he handed them to her, telling her they bloomed beautifully, just like her. She smiles at the memory as she accepted the flowers back then. But in the present, her smile fades and she frowns. Hwita notices her expression and frowns too. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that it's true, she really has returned to this excruciating, tiresome, and horrible place. They continue riding toward the palace's back gate, feeling the weight of everything that has happened. As they ride, a new voice catches their attention. A girl in a green kimono calls out to Hwita, saying she has been waiting for him. Yeonwoo feels a chill run through her, realizing this voice is familiar. The newcomer has brown hair styled in two buns, held together by green ribbons. She bows slightly and introduces herself, saying she will be the one taking care of Yeonwoo. Her name is Sareem. Suddenly, Yeonwoo has a flashback of Sareem calling her Lady Yeonwoo while standing over her, looking worried. In that memory, Sareem appears close to tears as she asks if Yeonwoo is okay. Sareem calls out to her again, saying, "My lady, please tell me when you are having a tough time. I, Sareem, will always stand by your side." Tears start to gather in Yeonwoo's eyes, as she thinks about how relieved she is to see Sarim again. Hwita helps Yeonwoo down from the horse as Sarim explains that she has led her family to a comfortable place. Yeonwoo thinks to herself that she needs to hold on. But then she remembers. Sarim is one of Hyo Jo's subjects. Why is she here? Hwita puts his hand on Sarim's shoulder and tells her to take care of Yeonwoo. He asks her to dye Yeonwoo's hair, saying the color doesn't matter as long as it isn't bright. Once that's done, he instructs Sarim to give Yeonwoo a bath and a change of clothes, then send her to his bedroom. Yeonwoo's heart races, and she screams in her head, "What?" Hwita looks at her with a smile and adds, "Since we will be spending the night together." Sarim tells Yeonwoo to please follow her, saying "Milady" with a pleasant smile. Yeonwoo looks at her with a thoughtful expression. Sarim leads her into the palace, explaining that this is the place where Yeonwoo will be staying from now on. She encourages Yeonwoo to feel free to look around. Yeonwoo replies, "Yes, thank you," then scratches her neck nervously. She hesitates and finally says, "By the way." Sarim answers enthusiastically, "Yes, milady. Please go on." Yeonwoo takes a breath and says she doesn't want Sarim to call her milady. She insists that they can drop the formalities. Yeonwoo thinks that Sarim is mistaken about her relationship with Sir Hwita. She is pretty sure Sarim didn't mean it that way. But Sarim interrupts, saying that's not right. She explains that it was Sir Hwita who insisted. He has instructed them to call Yeonwoo milady, so how could she possibly drop the formalities? Yeonwoo blushes and stutters, that's, but, then cuts herself off. Sarim asks if that will be all, saying that it is the first time their house has let a lady in. Yeonwoo asks, "First time?" Sarim confirms, "Of course." Yeonwoo remembers when Hwita kissed the back of her hand, and she feels herself blush a little. She thinks to herself that he doesn't seem like the type at all. Sarim turns around and cuts off her thoughts, saying it is nothing and that she is not in a position to tell Yeonwoo. But she is certain that Yeonwoo is special to Sir Hwita. Yeonwoo thinks about what that means, special to Sir Hwita. She asks Sarim to excuse her, and if she can tell her what Sir Hwita is like. Sarim turns back and asks if Yeonwoo knows anything about the guardian spirit. Yeonwoo breaks into a sweat and admits that she has never heard of it. Sarim nods and says she sees, so Yeonwoo wasn't informed. She explains that people who are born and raised in this place have a beast spirit in them. These beast spirits are referred to as guardian spirits. Sarim explains that there are many types of guardian spirits, from weak ones like rabbits and sparrows to the powerful king of the jungle that rules the forest. In tough situations, these spirits can show themselves, and the stronger the guardian spirit, the stronger the person is considered. Yeonwoo nods, already knowing this. She remembers that the most powerful person in the underworld, the ruler here, is Jang Gong, who has the tiger guardian spirit. Hyo Jo, the person she knows, has the brown bear guardian spirit. Sarim adds that Sir Hwita has the guardian spirit of a black wolf, which is why everyone calls him the Black Wolf. Soon, they arrive at the bathroom. Sarim leads her to a pool of water in the middle of the room and asks what color she would like to dye her hair. With Yeonwoo's fair skin, any color would look good on her. She thinks about it and suggests black, just like Sir Hwita's hair color. As she notices Sarim's excitement, she blushes. The Sarim she remembers wasn't this friendly and outgoing, so it feels a bit strange. Sarim assures her that she will always stand by her side. Yeonwoo wants to trust her, remembering how many things have changed in this life. Instead of meeting Hyo Jo, she meets Sir Hwita. Instead of staying at Hyo Jo's palace, she is at Sir Hwita's place and has met Sarim. Still, she wonders why she wants to change her hair color. While thinking, Yeonwoo fiddles with a strand of her hair. Sarim warns her that she will stain her hand. All these events show her that her life will be very different from her past 2 lives. Yeonwoo wonders if this time, she can at least look forward to things. Sarim pulls her out of her thoughts, asking what she should do. She is trying hard to apply the black dye, but can only take away the shine, not the color. Yeonwoo turns to her and says that removing the gloss is good enough. Sarim looks a little uncertain and says she wants to help her match her hair color with Sir Hwita's. Yeonwoo replies that it can't be helped and thinks the color looks nice. She thanks Sarim, who says she will wait outside so Yeonwoo can rest comfortably. Once Sarim leaves the room, Yeonwoo feels a blush creep to her cheeks, as she thinks about being called a special person. A flashback comes to her mind where Hwita says she should be honest with him and tell him what she wants. He wants to know the real feelings behind her fake confession. She thinks to herself that he did propose a deal, but she never got to hear what he really wanted. If she is truly special to Hwita, he will protect her and her family, right? After soaking in the tub for a while, she puts on a robe and comes out. Hwita is leaning against the wall and asks if she is already done with her bath. Yeonwoo flushes and freezes when she hears his voice. He mentions that ladies are supposed to take longer to get ready, and it's not too bad to wait for her after all. She turns to him, startled, and says, "Why you? Who said you could come in?" He raises his hand in a mock surrender and tells her not to be mad. He reminds her that she suggested it herself, saying she wanted to become his woman. Yeonwoo pales at his words. He leans closer and asks if those were not her exact words. She reminds him that he said he doesn't take in strangers. He smiles and agrees, saying he did, but he came to discuss their deal. Looking back, he realizes he hasn't really talked about the conditions of this deal yet. Since he would have accepted her conditions, she should accept his too. That way, they can properly set up their agreement, right? Yeonwoo says that makes sense, so she asks what kind of conditions he has in mind. He smiles and says it's very simple. From now on, he would like it if she became his wife. Yeonwoo goes pale when she hears him say he wants her to be his wife. She feels shocked and asks if it's just a game to him, if he finds it funny to mess with her. He looks confused and says sorry. Tears start falling down her cheeks, as she tells him it sounds ridiculous for a woman he just met to ask him to take her. She reminds him that he acted distant and rejected her when she first mentioned it. So doesn't he think it's wrong to say this now? She thinks to herself that he can't understand how she feels as those words leave her mouth. He doesn't even know her. He gently cups her face and pushes a strand of hair behind her ear, apologizing for not explaining himself well. He says it seems like she misunderstood him. He's sorry for not considering her feelings. To ask a man she just met to take her, she must be in a tough situation. He assures her that he isn't lying or joking when he says that. He asks if she can give him a chance to explain himself. Soon after, we see Yeonwoo being dressed in a red and golden kimono by the handmaids. She thinks back to last night, when she and Hwita sat together drinking green tea. He pours her a cup and tells her that Jang Gong is a special figure in this place. He is the king of the underworld and owns the strongest familiar. He mentions that there are 2 candidates being considered to become Jang Gong's successor. Yeonwoo thinks about this and wonders who the 2 candidates are since Jang Gong only has one son, Hyo Jo. Hwita continues, saying that the 2 candidates are Hyo Jo, who is Jang Gong's direct descendant, and himself, who is Jang Gong's distant cousin. Yeonwoo processes this information and wonders if it's really true. Hwita explains that right now, Hyo Jo sees him as a threat, because his existence gets in the way of Hyo Jo's chance to take the throne. Hwita explains that to show he isn't interested in becoming the successor, he needs a woman who has nothing to do with all that. At that moment, she appears. Yeonwoo feels pale after hearing this explanation. He asks her what she thinks. Will she be his pretend wife? He tells her that when she is ready to accept his proposal, she should come back to his bedroom. Back in the present, Yeonwoo thinks about this memory while she gets dressed. The idea of being a pretend wife floats in her mind. After finishing up, she and the maid who helped her walk to Hwita's quarters. When they reach his door, Sarim calls out that Lady Yeonwoo has arrived. In her past life, she never heard about Jang Gong's distant cousin, and she isn't sure how much of what Hwita said is true. But she knows she doesn't have any other options. From inside the room, Hwita replies that she can come in. The maids open the doors, and Yeonwoo steps inside, looking prettier than ever. Hwita wears a matching kimono and smiles, saying that she is here. He looks at her with appreciation. He tells her that it doesn't matter what his status, position, or situation is. She needs to use everything she has, just like he is using her. He notices she has a nice expression and asks if she has made her decision. Yeonwoo nods and says yes, she will be his wife. He smiles and says it's a deal. He gestures to a chair and tells her to sit down. He explains that in front of others, they need to look like a couple who has fallen in love at first sight. He leans in, asking if he can put his lips on her neck. She responds with a soft, "Oh." Then he mentions that he told Sarim not to let her wear earrings. It seems like Yeonwoo forgets everything else for a moment. As Hwita leans in closer, she suddenly remembers when Hyo Jo leaned in and said her name. He had told her that the only person she could kiss was him. This memory makes her feel a rush of emotions, and she suddenly shouts at Hwita, telling him to let go. Her outburst surprises Hwita, and he quickly pulls back, releasing her from his hold.